Episode 65. This week we cover Whom Gods Destroy. This episode, decent. They could have done much more with it, but they did not, so it ended up being decent. It's sort of a reboot of an episode they had done earlier, where in this one, Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock beam down to a mental institution colony because they have medicine to help the criminally insane, of which in the entire galaxy there's only 15 apparently. They get down there, and this Dr. Corey tells them that the force field's been turned back on so no one can escape, and he wants them to go to dinner with them. Kirk and Spock are like, sure, that'd be great. So Corey takes them down the hallway. They go by the cells with the criminally insane, and an Orion slave girl tells Kirk that she needs help because Dr. Corey wasn't whom he claimed to be. Wasn't whom he was claiming. Dr. Corey said she's been saying that for days. We don't know what it means. Mr. Spock, based on the 20 seconds of dialogue with her, says she seems perfectly rational. Made that determination. She's like, I am perfectly rational. And then when they get to the cell that is supposed to hold former Starship Captain Garth, they see Corey. Kirk's like, how is that possible? And then the guy they thought was Corey turned into Garth. Just metamorphosized. Just inexplicably. Inexplicably, he was Garth. He took Kirk and Spock captive. He had Corey in the cell, pinned up on the wall. Corey explained that some alien planet that was trying to help Garth when he went insane, or was being treated for injuries which led him to go to insane or something, they taught him how to use cell remodification to heal his injuries, and then he took that and developed shape-shifting abilities. Became a shapeshifter, even though he wasn't born with that ability. He just made it up. And they went with that. They sure did. Well, then there's a long, drawn-out sequence where he insists Kirk go to a dinner, and Spock gets apparently phasered. It was off camera, but apparently he was phasered and dragged off. And they're explaining to Kirk that Garth wants to go after the ship that had mutinied on him when he ordered the genocide of a race. Kirk tried to explain they were there to help him. They had medication that could help. Garth's like, I destroyed that. It was a poison. And Garth morphs into Kirk, tries to trick the Enterprise into beaming him aboard so he can steal the Enterprise, but Scotty's like, here's this chess maneuver, what's the counter? Because Kirk had ordered the password, basically, before he went down on the away mission. Garth didn't know it, so he just keeps saying, I don't have time for chess, beam me aboard, and Scott just keeps giving him the chess maneuver, and finally he's like, okay, I was just testing you, goodbye. And Scotty and Dr. McCoy are like, well, that's weird, maybe something's wrong. But they can't do anything because of the force field, and if they blast it with phasers, it'll blow up the whole mental institution. And apparently the planet atmosphere is so poisonous people can't live there, which is why they chose that planet to build a force field bubble around an institution so no one could escape. Which made sense to a point. They have the dinner that Kirk was promised. Garth tries to entertain him with various things, including the poetry of the Orion slave girl, which she claims to have written that day, but it was just old poems from famous poets. He claims that she didn't write it. She's like, I did so this morning, because I remembered the poem, so I wrote it down. Hence I wrote it. Then she does some dances, which Spock compares to Vulcan nursery school dances. They get Spock out of there. Kirk tries to fight his way through while he's negotiating with these people. That doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. They bring in a chair, It's the same chair from the last time they were taken prisoner at a mental institution, the exact same chair. And rather than rehabilitate people, this one causes pain without causing damage to the tissue. They throw Dr. Corey in there. Kirk's like, I won't tell you the counter chess move. So Garth puts Captain Kirk in there. Captain Kirk seems more confused and in pain, but he allegedly is in pain. It still doesn't work. He won't tell them. Oh, Kirk's in his quarters when the Orion slave girl comes in, says she wants to help him escape. She is in love with Kirk, apparently, but so she's going to help him escape. She's got it all worked out, she says. Kirk's like, okay, that's great. Then she pulls the knife out from under his pillow, tries to stab him. Spock walks in, knocks her out with the neck pinch. They go to the control room so they can get back, and then Kirk catches on. Spock's not Spock, it's Garth. He's taken the form of Mr. Spock. So he doesn't fall for it. So again, Scotty's like, well, this is weird. He's got an armed guard battalion ready to go down there. They can't get down there because of the force field. Sulu's like, we could blast here and take a shuttle in, but they couldn't take enough heavy equipment apparently to get through the atmosphere to get to the institution, so it doesn't work, apparently. McCoy is for words. He's completely for words. But they end up getting out of the jam because Garth once again becomes Captain Kirk. They get to the control room, and Garth kills Marta, the Orion slave girl. He invented an explosive. Apparently the vial of it would completely blow up the entire planet. One drop of this explosive, like a grain of sand, he said, he placed in a necklace on Marta, and a remote control bombed her when she was in the poisonous atmosphere. That's what he did. And Spock eventually shows up after he phasered his way, like knocked out the guards and Orion and a Tellarite with double neck pinch. Gets to the control room, and Kirk and Garth are like, I'm the real Captain Kirk, shoot him. No, I am, shoot him. Spock can't determine which one's which, so he goes to sit down, and one of the Captain Kirks punches him in the head. So he falls down, watches them fight, then he shoots the guy that has a chair in his hand, ready to chair shot the other guy. Turns out that was Garth. So Captain Kirk's like, well, how did you know which one of us to shoot? And he's like, well, I figured the real captain would lose the fight because he was in a weakened condition, so logically that guy had to be Garth. Kirk's like, oh, okay. They finally beam down the guards, they take control of the institution, and they go home. Some interesting notes in this one. It was one of the few episodes where Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock were never on the Enterprise during the course of the episode. They sure weren't. Also, one of the very, very few times you could see Mr. Scott's missing finger on his hand. There's like a brief scene where he had both hands out and you could see the missing finger for a quick second. Also, the actress that played Marta, the Orion slave girl, Yvonne Craig, who was Batgirl. She sure was. One of a few people that crossed over Batman to Star Trek. Yvonne Craig, of course, the Orion slave girl. You had all the key players on the episode. Most of them didn't have very much to do. Scotty, McCoy, Sulu, Uhura, barely in it. Barely in it. Chekhov, essentially not in it. Like, I think you saw him just briefly. But, pretty much, that's it.